alcohol is like a personal relationship. Like people have a very functional relationship with it. But because we all know it's bad for us, we pretend that we don't.
Aaron, welcome to Bite-Sized.
Thanks, man. Super glad to be here. And you're like one of my favorite people in the world. So this is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, dude, I appreciate that. What a way to start the podcast. And likewise, I've known you for some time, always respected what you are doing, whether it's with the agency and now Brez, and we're going to dive into all of that. So I'm pretty familiar with you and your story, but for anyone who isn't, why don't you give like a quick overview of your career story, kind of what got you started and what you're currently doing?
Absolutely. So I got access to the internet at a pretty young age. I think I was 11 years old. I built my first 2 websites for my dad's friends' fishing companies, and I used that money to buy my first MacBook. I got into iPod touch hacking. Then I got into graphic design. I started a e-commerce brand at 13 on MySpace and Big Cartel, the OG days. So you know something about that, I'm sure. I got into sponsorships and endorsements, is what we used to call it, modern day influencer marketing, sponsoring bands. I joined a band. Long story short, I just learned how to use the internet to promote a lot of different projects and ideas. And I tapped into a counterculture that existed there. And I think that accelerated my path to know how social works, to know how attention works, to know how the internet is the most massive and effective tool to influence those things. Failure taught me that if you can create really great products that actually improve people's lives and influence attention, you can change the world fundamentally. And that's what I'm trying to do today. So what am I doing today? I founded an agency called Lucid, which is the largest cannabis social advertising agency in the world. We run 90% of all cannabis ads on social media. It's now ran by my partner, Alvin Klein. He's the CEO there. He's crushing it. And then about 15 months ago, I founded a brand called Brez, which is a microdosed cannabis and mushrooms in a can. It's a non-alcoholic social tonic that creates this happy, uplifted, euphoric feeling. And dude, it's just been scaling like crazy. It's kind of like blowing my hat off. I'm just kind of holding on, to be honest, but it's a lot of fun.
Amazing, man. Yeah, I mean, and one of the components of Brez specifically is the build in public. So we've all seen the Shopify screenshots, and it's just been an absolute rocket ship. What's that felt like? And did you anticipate it being such a, I don't want to disrespect the hard work, but instant success?
Yeah. Well, it's like my favorite quote about success on that regard is Steve Jobs said, it always surprised him how long instant success takes. It's like to like the outside world, Brez just popped up and blew up. It's this massively growing, like almost mind-bending, like how something can grow this fast. For people's reference, Brez did. Started 14 months ago. We did 2.5 million last year. I think we've done $12 million in revenue thus far, and we're pacing for 25 million for the year. To answer your question, did I think it was going to happen? Fuck yeah, I did. Like I knew in the bottom of my heart that this is what the world needs, and primarily because I knew what I needed. Like I used to drink a lot. I joke around and say I went pro and retired early. And like I knew the hole that existed in my social network and the fun times that I was previously having that I wasn't having anymore, which was a wise decision because they were coming at such a high cost. But does really having fun and a good time have to come at such a high cost? And, evaluating that question and looking for solutions and seeing what was on the market, and there were some good options on the market. They weren't great. I built a product that I wanted. I built the product that would allow me to hang out with my friends that were drinking and have a great time at a comparable level, just not come at such a heavy cost to my life. And once we formulated it and once we started distributing it, we launched it on 420, funny enough. Just as soon as I got other people's core reactions and my own, it was obvious to me that this was going to be a multi-billion-dollar brand. It was just now filling in the space until it gets there.
Amazing, man. And we'll dive more into that. And I've tested the product and I love it. So congratulations. I'm definitely a fan. But kind of going back, so Lucid happened before Brez. And as you mentioned, the number one agency for cannabis and CBD advertising on social. And having dabbled in a little bit of that early days in my own agency, cannabis and CBD historically, probably the most challenging verticals to market through digital and social media.
For sure.
Yeah. With all the legal restrictions and everything. So why did you choose those verticals?
So the core principle that I think I live by is that going down the same rabbit hole that everyone else goes through never is going to lead to outsized returns. And that I find that the only way you're going to catch wind is going upstream. It's kind of a weird analogy, but it's like you find outsized returns by going against the grain, not by following the run of the mill. So that was kind of like the premise. I also, a little bit backstory, like I said earlier, instant success is never really instant success. It's always kind of stacked over time. So I was the CMO of a company called Monk, M-O-N-Q, which was a portable aromatherapy diffuser. We essentially took vape tech and we removed the nicotine and tobacco. We added essential oils to it. And I tried to advertise that. And first, Meta was telling me, no, you can't advertise e-cigarettes. And I wrote letter after letter to Zuckerberg and policy, et cetera, just saying, this is not an e-cigarette. This is a aromatherapy vaporizer that uses vaporizer technology. And that if you don't see that, then the corporate machine has ate your soul or something like that. Something like really silly. Yeah. And funny enough, though, after I sent that letter, my ad account got unlocked and we became the first non-vaporizer, quote unquote, to run ads on Meta. So that taught me that there's multiple ways to innovate. You can innovate by throwing out the rules and just doing new shit, which is what most people know, or you can follow the rules better than anyone else and then build new rules on top of them. That's what really kind of unlocked the potential for CBD advertising later in life. I started a CBD brand after that, right after the 2018 Farm Bill, which is what really created the conditions for hemp-derived products to be readily accessible in the mainstream market. And I tried to advertise it left and right, and I failed a lot. And then I succeeded a couple times. And I was like, wow, if I could pull this off, it'd be massive because no one else can do it. Everyone that's tried, it's like it wasn't worth the energy to try because it costs so much time and failure that like the opportunity cost was too high. So I did that, and then I did it for a bunch of other brands. And actually what happened is I got, during the 2020 elections, everything got shut down. Like all my ad accounts, my whole agency was like in despair. And so I called Nick Shackelford, a mutual friend of ours. And I said, hey, Nick, like I know you have really good support at Meta. You guys spend a lot at Structured. If you can give me access to that support, I think I can convince them that what we're doing is compliant and that we'd be able to advertise. And he said, I'll give you access to the support. Let's see if it works. And if it works, let's talk about some type of partnership so I can sustain that access. So it worked. We pulled it off. Meta agreed with my premises, which kind of followed that same idea. Is like knowing the rules, building new rules on top of it. And primarily that was around educational content initially. So less salesy content, but educational content, which is what made it compliant. We do a lot of different things today, but that was the core strategy and it worked. So I gave Nick a piece of the company and then he came on as a partner and turned out to be a way better partner than I expected. He was way more involved, way more helpful and just like always fighting for our benefit. And so we just scaled. And then, like it's hurdles for sure. We had ad accounts go down, we have pages go down, we have profiles go down, but it's like with our keen focus on just that, you start coming up with solutions for each of those. And those solutions become intellectual property that allow us to have a differentiated agency and moat around our business that outperforms what others can do. That's like why I'm pretty open with our strategies. It's like, I don't actually think it's a good idea for any other agency to try. Like it's like, because it's our sole focus, we can do it well. If it wasn't our sole focus, I don't know, man. It's tough. Like it takes a lot of legwork. It's like all of our systems are around running compliant and sustainable ads on social for cannabis products. And it doesn't really apply to any other vertical.
No, definitely. And like I said, we dabbled a couple of years ago and I decided not to take that path.
Why?
So I'm happy with that decision. I think it's great to your point. Like if you're going to go down a vertical like that, I think you need that specialty focus on it. So it seems like now maybe, there's less legal restrictions, but more broadly and maybe for your clients at Lucid and how you're working with Brez, like what are some of the challenges to overcome when advertising these types of products, right? Because yes, legalization has changed and everything like that, but it's still not, I wouldn't say commonplace, right? When you compare it against maybe alcohol and stuff. So what are some of the challenges that you kind of like see and have to overcome?
Absolutely. The main challenge is that Meta's policy is lagging behind the actual laws. So the laws facilitate the sales of these products, but Meta's policies don't necessarily facilitate the sales of these products. So, we kind of went from like a compliant white hat agency following the rules to kind of being more of an activist agency that kind of pushes the limits a little bit of what's possible and try to find that happy medium of what they'll accept and what's actually going to convert. And so, the main challenge is you can't say THC, you can't say CBD, you can't say things like this, which is the core to the product. And so you have to be creative. So we say things like, use social tonic, non-alcoholic, adaptogenic beverage, just the more creative you can be with it, I think the better. The other challenge is like you need to keep your account healthy. Like it's a very basic media buying principle, yet most people don't do it. They let their accounts just get fat with rejections. They let their account score down. They let their page score go down. All of these things are just signals to Meta that say, hey, I shouldn't be on this platform. So we're very careful to ensure that all signals that we send from all of our ad accounts for all of our clients and for Brez is very positive. Like I want the system seeing us as a very healthy and favorable advertiser. And that oftentimes is enough to keep your shit going. But that's kind of the angle.
Yeah, that makes sense. And with that, though, when you're not able to be explicit about the product, what does that change in terms of expectations of performance and everything else? Because, I have some familiarity, like you said, like I mentioned earlier, about when you can't say it's this and it helps with this. And, and I know there's like stuff around claims, but how much does that change like measurement and expectations of what ads are going to do for products and brands like this?
Yeah, great question. We got a headwind and a tailwind when it comes to the cannabis space. The headwind is you have to come up with creative language to communicate the value of the product, which I think that most challenges are actually opportunities. So I'd love to expand on that more. But the tailwind that's kind of pushing you forward is that you're selling cannabis on social media, which is like a pretty effective thing to do. People really want these products. They're legal. They want to have access. They don't know where to go. Shipping direct to your door for a cannabis product, whether it's CBD or THC from hemp, is a very compelling offer. So I think that's the tailwind that makes these things a little bit more effective. Back to the headwinds, though, the other challenge is like most cannabis brands don't have a ton of D2C revenue. Thus, they're not having a lot of data to feed into the algorithms to help make them successful. And so that's kind of another challenge there. With that headwind, though, like people desperately want to say buy THC now on the internet. But like you and I know that that's not actually the best way to promote a brand. Like that's some BS marketing nonsense that like won't actually work. What actually works is creatively communicating the unique selling propositions of the products and expressing them in a relatable and fun manner. You can do that without saying THC. Like, why do people consume THC? Well, because it makes them feel good, because it helps them, feels euphoric, it feels relieving. It creates a uplifted mood. It creates stress relief. And all those words and all that language I just used would be considered compliant claim language, because I'm not actually claiming to cure or treat a disease, which is what is not compliant under the FDA. I'm making suggestions of what positive benefits products like this can create that are just kind of, I think the key word here is therapeutic, good for the mind, body, and soul. And so, when you make therapeutic claims, which is a fine line, you got to be careful there. Like you can be very effective with your advertising. It's just about creativity. And unfortunately, when you tell people can't do something, all they want to do is that, which blocks a lot of people's ability to think creatively on how to do it compliantly and effectively. So a lot of our efforts are saying, hey, stop trying to touch the red button. Let's come up with new ways to touch the green button. And if we can find new and better ways to do that, then we'll be able to get real outsized returns. But I would say that the performance we see for our clients at Lucid is comparable, if not better, than the majority of agencies on the market. Part of that is we have a really good team, but the other part of that is we spend a lot of time coming up with unique ways. Plus, like when you're in a vertical like cannabis and you're a leader, some guy told me this one time I really liked. 2 is a conflict, 3 is a specialty. Like we have learnings that we collect from running the best brands in the world in cannabis on Meta. And, we have a rising tide raises all ships approach where I figure something out with Brez, I distribute it to my clients at Lucid. Like if we find out new compelling ways to communicate, or like we try to share that. Now we do so in a way that protects our clients' privacy and consumers' privacy, but there is definitely like overarching strategies that can be applied to the market at scale. I also find that the market, as the category increases, especially at this time, the overall volume of sales for everyone increases. So there's kind of this like halo effect that comes from just supporting a lot of brands and helping them become successful. But it's hard to teach. It's hard to teach scarcity-minded people that competition is bullshit. But if you can, and we try to, a lot of net benefit for everyone.
I'm not super familiar. Actually, outside of Brez, I actually really don't consume cannabis or CBD. I'm a little bit straight edge. What are some of the trends in market? Like how rapidly is this growing? Do you have any insight on that? Because I don't know how much from a legal perspective is still to change, but like, what is the growth potential and how quick is that growth happening from a broader cannabis market perspective?
Multiple ways to think about it. Brez is kind of a unique case because Brez is creating an alcohol alternative, an alternative to alcohol, which is a $250 billion market in the US and a 1.5 trillion market across the globe. And like, to put that in perspective, the current projections for AI is 600 billion in the globe. So alcohol is 2.25 times bigger than the potential of AI at the moment. And like, that sounds silly until you think about it. Like, people drink, everyone drinks. Like, it's in every gas station, it's in every grocery store, it's in every liquor store. Like, it's what we do on the weekends, it's what the restaurants circulate around. Bar culture just emphasizes every day. It's actually so integrated into society that we stop seeing it, which is very curious. Like, how often do you think about the automotive industry? Like, it's almost a utility. Like, that's how big it's got. And it's actually comparable to the energy drink industry in the same way. Like, Monster Energy, for example, it's a $60 billion company that sells green water with caffeine in it. Anyway, to your main question, data is a funny thing, especially this early in a category. I think they say that the hemp industry is currently sized around 28 billion, but I think like what I'm looking at is the potential of a product that can fundamentally disrupt alcohol, that can participate in the disruption of pharmaceutical, one of the other largest industries in the world, a product that can disrupt the energy drink market, and then this new mecca market that's being created, which I think is functional drinking. We went from alcohol. The first thing people do when they want to stop drinking alcohol, which, by the way, 43% of Americans in 2024, so they're trying to drink less or cut it out completely, 43%, which is insane. We also have a 60% of Americans have tried cannabis in the last 12 months. So we have this rising consumption of cannabis, and we have this rapidly dropping decline of alcohol consumption. So you go from alcohol, and then they go to a non-alcoholic beer. If you ever tried a non-alcoholic beer, it tastes just as bad as alcohol does or beer does, but it doesn't give you any of the fun. So it's just like calories, carbs, sugars, and bad taste, but no fun. So consumption changes. All of a sudden, people that drink 5 beers a night go to drink 1 NA beer every 3 days, and they do that for about a month, and then they stop drinking them. And I think that we're in this weird paradigm where people are still shifting at such hordes to non-alc that it looks like non-alc is going to keep going up, but I don't think that's actually what's happening. I think non-alcoholic is an intermediary between alcohol and conscious functional drinking. Conscious functional drinking being net positive consumption, meaning that I'm getting more out of life because I drank a product like this than it's taking from me. And I don't think we can say that for alcohol. I'm not trying to over demonize it, but the reality is no one's drinking a beer thinking they're going to wake up feeling better. It might lead to some of the most fun times or best times of your life, but if you take a zoomed out a look at it, I think for the majority of humans, that's actually a net negative experience, although it might have spikes of fun and positivity, and for sure. So I guess my fundamental question is like, is there a better way to feel better? And I think we've proven that there is. And if that holds true and people realize that by feeling and understanding, I think there's few bigger markets in the world.
I agree with everything you're saying as someone who drinks beer, right? And it's, I don't want to expose myself on my own podcast, but it's like, I don't drink excessively, but it's a relaxation tool, right? It's a relaxation social tool. And I've had some personal hesitancies about getting high. And I think one of the things I enjoyed about Brez, I actually remember messaging Nick being like, I really want to support and try the product. But I don't want to get high and not be in control. And so I think, he reassured me. And I think that's probably some of the broader consumer perception, right? Of like, well, maybe it is a good alternative, but I don't want to feel high and be tripping and all that sort of stuff. There's a lack of education, because I'm sure you even deal with this. My brief experience with CBD is like, people think CBD is going to get them high. There is a lack of broader consumer education around, and I think that's where like dosing comes in, and education, to your point. How have you thought about that in the development of the products?
Honestly, like, I didn't build Brez for cannabis consumers. I am a cannabis consumer, and personally I enjoy cannabis, and I think it's great and adds a lot of value to my life, but that's not who we built this product for. We built this product for people who are enjoying alcohol, who want a better way to feel better. And I knew that THC, especially from hemp and a full spectrum variety of hemp extract, where it's THC, CBD, and other minor cannabinoids, is a very therapeutic and efficacious ingredient and could add a lot of value. And I don't know how much we want to get into the science, but like Brez is actually like a pretty science-forward, technologically advanced product. The extract we use is called mother liquor, which is a naturally derived extract from hemp. And then we nano emulsify that through acoustic processing technology, which is a bunch of big words to say that we make the particles, the THC particles, really small by hitting it with sound. So we kind of blast it like with big speakers, essentially, to make the particles break down to smaller sizes, which makes it homogenize through the liquid. So you don't taste like a gritty, or you don't taste like weed or anything. So it's dissolvable into water. But what's so interesting about nano emulsification is it changes the effect curve of the product. So if you take a puff of a joint, it's super high, like really quickly, especially California weed, like it's the strongest weed in the world. I'm not saying we should outlaw it or anything, but we should recognize it's really strong weed. So you take a puff of that and you're kind of blasted. It's kind of hits you fast. It might be fun, but it's not really a social thing you can do at a bar. It also smells a lot and you're burning plant matter ultimately. So that's not really best for your body, or edibles is different. Edibles, and so you get high quickly and you fall off with smoking. Edibles, you take them, and then you're kind of just waiting like 30 minutes, 60 minutes, maybe 90 minutes, and then it hits you. And what's different about edibles is it processes through your liver and it creates another compound in the processing of your liver called 11-hydroxy-THC, which is actually more notorious with like a psychedelic experience. So if you hear these stories of people who ate an edible, they were sitting on the couch, they felt like they were dying, and they called 911. This is often the case. Also, dosage is very unclear, like what is strong and what is not strong. Like, 5, 10, 15 milligrams doesn't sound like that much, but especially when you're comparing it to a product that's 100 milligrams or 200 milligrams on the shelf. But like for a novice consumer, that will put you on your ass. So there's that issue, right? So, but with this nano emulsified tech, and specifically THC, it makes the particles so small that they're actually absorbing through your mouth, through your cheeks, through your throat, through your stomach lining, and you're feeling it within 5 minutes. And what is that comparable to? Alcohol you feel very quickly. Like you get that initial euphoric buzz when you have that first sip, and it gets like a relaxing effect as time goes on. So with Brez, this nano emulsified technology, we figured out in how to make cannabis fast acting and short lasting, which are the two requirements necessary to compare the effect curve to alcohol. So when you drink Brez, you feel it quickly and it falls off fairly quickly. It's also because we're able to cap the dosage, it's not like you're just shooting off into the stars and you don't know where you're going to land. And it's not like you're on this 4 to 6 hour journey. And what's beautiful about that too, is just like alcohol, you can sesh the drinks. You can have one, feel it. You can have half of one, feel it. You could have 2, 3, whatever you want, and have that kind of unique experience. So like we thought about it less of like, can we make a better cannabis product for cannabis users? Thought about it more of like, how would you make a product that would actually be able to replace alcohol for the majority of consumers and still feel great without the consequences? And we looked at the ingredients that could really help us do that. Hemp-derived THC through this nano emulsified technology was a great example. Also, we do a similar process with lion's mane, very potent, very fast acting, which creates a little bit more of that euphoric buzz that you get with alcohol paired with the relaxation that you get with THC. And I think just like you're saying, it doesn't feel like weed. And I mean, there's definitely a parallel. Like you can compare it if you're familiar with cannabis, but it's not really like this cannabis buzz. It's a very unique experience that feels both relieving and exciting all at the same time. And that is, I think, the effect magic that the alcohol industry tapped into thousands of years ago and that we're evolving out of now.
Yeah, no, and as I mentioned, personal experience, I've tried cannabis, and I don't know whether it was California weed, and I did not enjoy the experience. And then Brez, to your point, it was subtle and calming, and yeah, none of what I perceive to be the negatives of smoking a joint, right? I didn't enjoy going down that route. So I love that was the mindset going into the development of the product. And you kind of mentioned it earlier, it's not the first cannabis-infused product on the market. Right? There's been products and brands beforehand. Like this isn't necessarily like a compare yourselves, but what differentiates Brez? Is it that process? Is it the real focus on it being that very social, not specifically tailored for a cannabis user?
Yeah, I think so. Like at the end of the day, and I ask myself this question often, is like, what makes Brez different? It just hits different. Like we're keenly focused on creating an efficacious and safe experience for the majority of humanity. I think a lot of the rest of the brands are creating a great product, but I think that a lot of them are just selling THC. Like I'm not interested in solely shilling more THC. And I'm not trying to cast shade. I love a lot of the other brands and products in the market. I think they're great. And I think the bigger the category, the better for everyone. But I also think that like, if you're asking about my philosophy on how I'm building the brand and like where I think this market goes, like people aren't buying weed, they're buying experiences. And whoever can craft the best experience, that's who's going to win. And what is winning, I think is an important question. For me, it's like, I don't really have this ambition to make a lot of money from Brez. Like, I think that will be a natural outcome of creating value. But the real focus is like, I want the option to have efficacious, fun, life-enhancing experiences with my friends that help me connect and ultimately love more, that don't come at a heavy cost. In fact, they should not come at a cost. They should come at a value add if possible. And I think it is possible. And I think that we're keenly like tapped into that. Like, I think that's what we're paying attention to. And I think that's a lot different than a lot of people paying attention to. I think a lot of people are looking to start a big business and flip it. And, like you see this a lot with like big bev businesses, and what is the most unique yet still mainstream acceptable? Like, it's very like market dynamic driven or like corporate structure driven or industry driven rather than consumer focused. And like, I think that's what we're really doing different. Is like, I don't really give a fuck about what the rules are. I'm trying to focus on what consumers actually want and do that in a way that is safe, lab tested, effective, and I trust that consumer demand ultimately is what's going to drive the market reality. And so I think that's what makes us different. I think we get it. Like, we get that there's not great options and we want to make one. And now the challenge is like, there's a changing legal landscape around hemp. It was legalized in 2018 at a federal level, which made this whole thing possible. Now they're talking about potentially changing that, which could be a problem. But there's also a lot of states who are creating laws and conditions that facilitate the sales of these products. And then there's also states that are blocking the sales of these products. So I think that's going to go up and down, left and right. But, going back to our point earlier, Brez really isn't a THC or cannabis company solely. Like, we operate in that industry. I love that industry and respect that industry. But I'm trying to create a functional experience company, a functional beverage company that uses a host of different conscious compounds, net positive therapeutic compounds in a range of different end states that people feel good without feeling worse. And like, there's so many herbs and compounds and beautiful things like that are so natural and have been used for millennia for human benefit that haven't really been modernized with modern technology. And I think that like direction sounds like a lot of fun. And sounds very good for the world. And I like that.
How do you think about, and maybe it's too early to kind of say, or maybe you don't want to say, how do you think about product expansion within the brand and within the kind of vertical that you're within?
So right now we have, we started with our single, which is a 2.5 milligram THC. So it's a small version. This would be comparable to like a single shot or like a single beer. And this we call our double. So this would be like a double strength or double shot. Which are 5 milligrams. This is what we sell them a lot of these days. Most people end up drinking this. And then we have a non-infused option. So this is our no THC, just lion's mane mushroom blend, which is nice. It doesn't have that same level of a buzz, but it does carry this like relaxing, stress relieving effect, while you're also getting the therapeutic benefits of lion's mane on the brain, which is one of the most well-studied cognitive enhancing mushrooms in the market. So where do we go from here? I would like to create a range of blends that let people feel the way they want, tap in and have a little bit of influence over their state in a net positive way. And I'd like to use a whole host of compounds and modernize them and make them better and more effective, and find a way to do that. Really it just adds a lot of value to people's lives. And there's two ways to add value. Like we say, the mission at Brez is to reduce human suffering and maximize human potential. I think that's the right order of operations. Like, if like you need to take the thorn out of the lion's foot to let it roar properly, like that's how you do it. Like when you take away the oppression from people, all of a sudden when the weight's not on their shoulders, they can really stretch pretty far. They can do cool shit. And so the goal is like, if you switch and like get stories like this every day, which is the best part of the business. But when you replace alcohol in your life with Brez, life gets a lot better. Like all of a sudden you're having nicer times with your friends. You're feeling better in the body. Your conversations with your husband or wife or partner are much more pleasant. Your kids want to be around you. You know, it's like, and like, I really don't give that credit to Breeze. I give that credit to stop being alcohol. Like, and when the trouble is that you kind of mentioned this earlier, like, and I think it's something that we should stop shying away of as a society. It's like alcohol is like a personal relationship. Like people have a very functional relationship with it, but because we all know it's bad for us, we pretend that we don't. Instead, we're like, oh, you know, it's really the oak and the vanilla and the plum flavor that calls out to me. It's like, come on, like, no, it tastes like gasoline, like, you know, like it. And so I think the reality is like everyone wants to feel better. That's okay. The question is, how can we do so in a conscious way that adds value to our life, not takes from it?
No, I did kind of caveat it, didn't I? Because like there's some societal negatives around
it's
drinking.
Not just humans, it's everyone.
Yeah, you know, at the same time, it's like as humans, as people going through life, you want things that allow you to de-stress, relax. I think the mission is a phenomenal one, to bring a product to life that allows you to do that in a controlled way that isn't alcohol. Because to your point, there aren't many, dare I say, any positives to drinking alcohol.
I don't really think so. Not on a net basis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then again, want to be careful. It's not knocking anyone who does, because I do. It's just, I think for there to be a healthier option that is a more net positive is a phenomenal thing.
The trouble with alcohol, man, is it's a lot of fun. Like that's the trouble, is like you have positive experiences when you drink. So it's like, I'm not trying to take away from people's positive experiences, but I think we would all agree that like if you zoom out just enough, you'd realize that like the consequences that comes with those positive experiences ultimately is a decline. And it's a progressive decline, meaning it accelerates and gets worse over time. And that's not just the case for alcoholics. Like this is fundamental to the compound itself. It's a weird fucking drug, man. Like it's a hard drug. It's a very hard drug. Like alcohol is one of the few like drugs that we know of and like a readily accessible, like you have to monitor people 24/7 when they're detoxing from it, because they'll probably, they could die if they don't. There's other drugs that are comparable, but like cocaine doesn't do that. Weed doesn't do that. And I'm not promoting the use of cocaine, but I just want to like illustrate, we have these like what we call hard drugs that you can detox from and might be uncomfortable, but you're not going to die. Where you have alcohol, where if you're a serious drinker, you're on life support. Like you're being monitored at all times while you detox, because it's that life threatening. It's the question is like, why? I mean, you know, I'll give you one other kind of funny thing. It's like, you know, it's like if you ever go to someone and you're like, no, like I don't drink, or like, I don't want to drink, or I'm not going to drink tonight. It's funny how people respond, right? Like, so there's usually a couple different responses. One is like, nah, man, like, come on, you got it. Like, so why is that happening? Well, it's a self-justification means. It's like if you're not drinking and I am, maybe I'm doing something that's harmful that I know is harmful. And like if you were drinking, then it like gives me this confirmation bias that, hey, it's okay, we're all in this together. And that's the fundamental thing happening at society as a whole. When you go to the bar, we're all agreeing that this consumption, even though harmful, is okay. What the fuck? Like, so that's one. Two, it's the only thing, if you tell someone, hey, I don't drink that much, or I don't really drink, their next response is like, oh yeah, me neither. Like, I don't really have that much to drink either. It's like, why? Right? Because you don't do that with orange juice. Like if I told you I don't drink orange juice, would you be like, oh no, me either. I don't really. No, of course. Like it's orange juice. Like if you want orange juice. So why is there this inherent justification and like denial? Because we know it's bad for us. Like we're conscious creatures who can tell when we're consuming harmful, toxic things. And like, that's just often the case with alcohol. And like, I get it. I really do. I'm as an avid consumer of alcohol, there's a lot of fun times to be had with it. But like at the end of the day, the consequences are just significantly greater than the benefits.
It's interesting to think where society will be in another 100, 150, 200 years time. Because you think about the inception of alcohol wasn't that long ago. Like, do you know what I mean? Like the broader inception of consumer driven alcohol. And you just grow up with it because it's passed down generation. There's pubs, there's bars, and it's what's served. And to your point, it's like, it's a powerful drug. And a net negative. And it's really interesting to think, like, you know, as younger generations come up and there's more and more people, as you say, like giving alcohol up, sobriety, the spreading of information and knowledge across the internet and social media of how these things are bad for you and how they're net negatives. You know, I wonder if there's a world whereby that shift actually flips. I'm sure the alcohol companies will fight against that, right? But I can't see it not happening to an ever increasing degree.
I think that ultimately, like, it's less of a like us against them. Like I make it sound like that sometimes, and I really shouldn't. That's not really my goal. The thing is, like, we're all humans striving to do the best things we can. I don't think that a lot of the alcohol companies are like trying to hurt people. But when you realize you should offer them better alternatives that they can choose from. And I'm also not saying that alcohol should be prohibited. Like people should have access to do generally whatever they want is kind of my perspective on that. There should be education and guidance around that, but it's not about prohibition. I think it's about better offerings. And so my expectation is that alcohol is going to respond to consumer demands. And if they're looking for non-alcoholic options like they are, then they're going to release non-alcoholic options, which we're seeing that with Guinness Beer now, who sells a significant portion of their revenue is now non-alcoholic, or Heineken Zero is like one of the top rated non-alcoholic beers. White Claw Zero has been making a splash lately. So all that happens. Athletic Brewing, a huge, entrant, so I think that's like, they're going to do that. The next phase is they're going to being a functional beverage. Like, it's just, to me, it's obvious. I think I see it a lot earlier than most people do to its like fullest potential, but I very much believe the rest of the world will catch on very quickly. I think this is going to play out like tobacco played out. Like cigarettes might look cool when someone smokes, but like they're definitely not cool. Like they definitely are taking away people's lives. Like we know that they're heavy carcinogens that cause lung cancer, that like, we know all this about cigarettes, right? So then what happened with cigarettes? Like we started pacing like the reality of the effects of them on the things, and cigarette sales just dropped. I mean, they used to promote it for pregnant women to drink or to stay healthy, have a cigarette, and like when consumers realized that wasn't the case, and they pivoted. So then Marlboro goes and buys vape companies, and they go and buy a Zen, and they go and buy. So they pivot and they look for new ways to serve the audience in a way that hopefully is much more consumer focused in an efficacious way. So my expectation is that soon more people will see alcohol like we see tobacco. And it's not that there won't be people who want to consume tobacco. It's just that we'll have a little bit more of a conscious awareness of the negative effects. And hopefully that's a little bit more conscious consumption of both it and most likely a big shift away from it towards effective alternatives. And my expectation is if I was big alcohol, I would be trying to acquire and start those brands as soon as I possibly can. So that way I'm not left in the dust. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think any resistance to this functional drinking non-alcoholic movement is only going to create an enemy from the consumer's standpoint from alcohol, which is what we saw with tobacco. So if I was running a large alcohol corporation, I would, it's not about you're evil for selling alcohol. It's about create better options for people to consume and help facilitate that evolution sooner than later, because it's the right thing to do.
We spoke about this a little bit, I think, before recording. And again, caveating instant successes aren't ever instant, but the brand has scaled rapidly. And I think a lot about celebrity influencer-led brands, right? And I know you, I know Nick, I know some of the people involved in the brands, and within our sphere, within a certain pocket of the world, hold a level of influence and audience. And you're very public in terms of your building. How much do you think that helped? Was that a good launch pad for the brand? Talk a bit more about kind of whether that was like conscious and just like we were talking about audience build-ups and how that's so beneficial to people moving forward. Like talk a bit about how that was a helpful launch pad for the brand.
When you're just starting something and you're trying to achieve product market fit, it's kind of like being out in the woods or on an island, shaking a stick, just hoping that it's going to catch fire. Everything you can possibly do to get that thing to spark, you should do. And one of the easiest and most effective ways to do that today is like getting a little noise from influential people online. Myself and Nick especially had kind of this existing following, especially within the e-commerce, digital internet entrepreneurship world. And so, right out of the gate, like we just talked a lot and shared a lot. And, the idea there was like two things. Like one, like any attention is good attention and it's going to help us resolve the problems preventing us from a deeper set of product market fit. And, just like with advertising or any of these platforms, any little bit of data is feeding the machine so that way it can help optimize further. I think it's one of the most effective hacks in the game is to share your story on the internet. I think that there's very little, if you're smart, like very little net loss from doing so. Like, yes, maybe people copy you, maybe people rip you off, but honestly, I find that it's actually often the opposite. Like by creating so much noise so early on, we get such like a rallying around the community of what we're doing and in support of it and wanting to help it, that it's like, if someone were to rip us off, I feel like they'd be going up against 5,000 people who think that they're assholes for doing so, not just like against us. And it's a threat for sure. But I think that the benefit of being vulnerable and honest and loving in public is just so infinitely greater than the cost of a little bit of competition. And again, like I was saying earlier, like I don't really believe in competition. I don't really think that's how this thing works. Like I think it's more of a I think we have more of a meritocracy ultimately. Maybe at certain levels it changes, but I think that like when you're just so focused on creating a great product that helps people, and you're just like, you're focused on that North Star, like who's going to compete with you in your North Star? Like they don't know what I want or what I'm trying to do, or even if I share like this, how is that actually going to manifest? Like, what's that actually going to feel like? What's that actually going to look like? Like, these are things that I have that I'm following from my own self, or from my team and my partners. And like, you know, like if you're copying someone, you're always just following behind them. You're always just chasing behind. Like, you can never actually create something magnitude greater by doing that. You have to see something that doesn't exist. You're on your own. You can be inspired and influenced. So that's how I think about it. But ultimately, man, like sharing online lets people be involved in the story. It lets them be excited. It lets them support. It lets you support them. That's also a very keen focus of ours. Is like, we're not trying to just talk to people or talk at people, but rather like build together, support each other's growth, like learn from each other's experiences. And I think that pays net positive benefits for a very long time. Like, you know, when you treat people, and the internet is just really a new medium to promote that existing idea, which is that relationships and connection are important, and sharing your story and your experiences and your learnings, and your wins and your losses adds value to each other. And the internet allows you to do that in a new way, in a broader sense, and it stacks over time. And I think that it's probably going to be one of the more valuable things to our business for years to come, decades to come. And it's hard to really quantify. And, you know, it's like you shouldn't just post on the internet to post on the internet, but if you have something we're saying, say it. And I don't know exactly how to quantify it, but you'll feel the wave of energy of constant support from those around you when you do so. And it's definitely a winning strategy for us.
Again, I've known you for a while, and would definitely classify you as a friend and a peer in the space. As a founder and entrepreneur, I'm also aware that, you know, I say post and talk a lot, but you into your routine and your habits, and you're very intentional with how you live your life, which I think is great. Give some insight into what some of those daily habits are, and how do you think that's benefited you in your business ventures?
Yeah, man, I'm kind of hardcore.
You are.
You know,
I was prefacing it, but you're fucking hardcore in it. So
it's from those music days, man. You know, nothing changed. But no, I for me, it's like, so it's a handful of things. Like I think it starts, and this is the one I don't always do as best as I want to, but I wish I did better, is like proper sleep. Like people undervalue what good sleep does for you. It's just so core to the body and your system that if you're not getting enough sleep, you're not your best self. So I try to start with best sleep. I don't always do that perfectly, but that's what is probably the biggest net benefit. Other than that, I wake up, I do ice bathing. I'm pretty hardcore into ice bathing. I have a ice bath in the back called a Brass Monkey that makes ice, and it's 33 degrees, and I get in there most every day for, you know, somewhere between a minute to 5 minutes, and do it a few times and hop back and forth between the sauna. I also invite friends over at around like 7, 8 a.m. and they come over and we ice and sauna together. And I think that's actually one of my secret weapons, is because it's like, it gives you that real strong sense of community and connection right out of the gate, let you process some of the kind of first layer ideas that you have going on. So I do that. And then I'm big on my adaptogens. So I consume Athletic Greens, which I don't know if they're the best greens company in the world, but I get the supplement in there. I consume creatine. Creatine, I think, is a super hack. Like, it makes me just feel smarter. I feel like I think clearer. I do that. Other than that, like working out to some, I don't do it nearly as much as I'd like to, but I think that's probably one of the most obvious and most effective things to just like keep yourself in a good state. Breathing exercises. I do Wim Hof breathing method. I trained with him once in Spain and once in Poland, and learned these cool techniques. And, you know, the ice bathing and the breathing give me a level of control over how I feel that I haven't had most of my life. And that has facilitated me into channeling my energy and creativity and entrepreneurial spirit into a much more consistent and effective manner. And so that's really the benefit I get from there. It also helps me calm down in the sauna. So it can kind of slow the mind, slow the body, and on chill. So those are kind of like the mainstays. My other main one is I travel a lot. I like to see the world. My wife's a travel writer, so we're on the road maybe 6 months out of the year. I think that when you do new things frequently, your mind is more creative and you see life a little bit more fresh. And so that's a big one for me. And I have a great wife. We spend a lot of time together and have a lot of fun together. And, you know, that level of security and trust and love I think creates the conditions for self-actualization. And that's where you get the best work of your life.
I love that. Summarized perfectly. I'm late to the ice bath crew, I have to say. I have to hit you up for a recommendation. You know, I
you
do it sometimes,
over, man, for sure.
I know, yeah, I should. I'm due a trip to Florida actually, so I'm always interested in this because a lot of people who start service businesses then want to start brands, and a lot of people who start brands then want to start service businesses. I'm not going to ask which one's your favorite.
I'll tell you.
Actually, okay, which one's your favorite, and what are some of the nuances of like the differences in challenge and also the experience of running a service-based company versus like a product-based company?
They're both like the grass is always greener, or like is what people say. The reality is it's just different shades of green, and people like different variations of green. Like, so you need to find whatever your shade is that you're into and like do that. I think that's what works best for people. But so for me, like I personally like brand side more, because I just feel like I'm creating ever compounding, stacking work that's going to benefit myself and the team and the world, not in that order, the world, my team, myself. And that is very fulfilling at a deep level. That being said, most brands aren't like, heavy profit earning machines until a liquidation event. And so I think like it depends on like where you're at in your story and what do you value, you know? So like what's beautiful about Brez is like I'm building something that I really love, that I really think is doing good things for the world, that I'm doing it with really great people. And like that has a lot of long-term value, and I get paid, but it's not like this heavy profit business. It's one day you sell for a 10x revenue valuation and do extremely well if you want to sell, or you get so big that your thin profit margins start paying out large distributions. But on the agency side, it's a different story. Agency side, the day you land a client, you start making a lot of money. It quickly stacks to significant capital. And what's interesting, it's like agencies don't typically become as big as, or they have less potential to become as big as consumer packaged goods brands or D2C brands, but they are profitable, and they start spending that cash off consistently. And that allows you to live a very good life. You have the means that you need and you're getting it in real time. And that's a very compelling offer, and often makes a lot of sense for people. Even if they want to start a brand at sometime in the future, starting an agency, I think, is a great path to starting a brand. You get a lot of experience on other people's dimes. You get to add a lot of value. You get to learn a lot of skills, and you get paid for it. But it's hard work. Like it comes at a heavy cost. It's a very like, what have you done for me lately business? It's like you can do the best work of your life. You can make someone $2 million in a month. And then next week they're like, well, why isn't this working? And how are we going to beat it? And why aren't you doing more? And that's a tough paradigm to put yourself in at all times. So I think it's a balance. I also think good partners help. It's like if you can, many hands make a light load. You got good friends and good community around you. I think that it gets a little bit more sustainable.
Love that. That's a great response. I had Jess Chan on the podcast a while ago, who runs a great retention agency. She said how like agencies, it's people business, so there's an emotional tax involved that, I'm not saying isn't there in a brand, but even myself kind of have an agency and I'm in very early stages of been involved in a couple of brands, but more so from like a partner perspective. But launching my fashion brand, it's like, there's an emotional tax to an agency because it's people, it's clients and different dynamics. And yes, the growth can stack, but you're always kind of having to prove your worth, right, to clients. But I like that. Different shades of green, I think, is the right approach. But good to know you prefer the brand side.
And like what and then I'm not ever like, there's people who prefer the agency side for sure. Like, and I think it's like to each their own on that thing. It's also just like, I think that like not thinking so linear about the projects that you work on in your life is like a very good skill to learn early on. Like if you can think that like I'm doing projects that are stacking towards like overall mission or overall goals, I think that you can do really well. Like, if you don't have any money, trying to start a brand with no money and no experience and no skills is a surefire way to live like a living hell type experience, and so experience a living hell type experience. Like, I know that because I tried it. Like, I had a lot of success in D2C working with other people, and then tried to do it myself thinking it was going to be all, easy peasy. And it's not. It's expensive. It's time consuming. It's challenging. It's taxing. It takes everything from you, but if you can earn a little bit of cash doing agency or freelance or working for someone else, like if you think of life a little bit more of like a journey with chapters rather than like a singular thing that I like, what do I do with my life? Like I don't know what the fuck I do with my life. I'm making cool shit, like trying to help people's lives become better. And like, I'll see how that evolves and I'll figure out new things. And I think of it far more of like an adventure than I think of it as like a job or like a career or like I think that that's a more exciting and expansive way to view life.
It allows you to think of things in a broader horizon, and you're pulling towards an overall mission or just growth of yourself versus there's things that start and end.
100%.
Aaron, it sounds like, you've been an entrepreneur since the age of 13, it sounds. And I guess I base this a little bit on later in life, but what has entrepreneurship taught you about yourself?
That my value isn't in what I have created, but rather in my ability to create. I think that that's what the core like lesson I've learned from entrepreneurship. And that's an important lesson because I think a lot of people do work and they're like, that's my value, or like, here's my thing. It's like, no, like the value is inherent. Like the value comes from your creative ability to manifest value. Like that's where the magic is. Like I learned this because a guy that promised me a salary when I was pretty young. And then or he said, if you could just hit this goal, then I'll pay you 50 cents more an hour or something. And I'm like, oh yeah, man. Like, all right, I'll do it. Pulled it off in a week. And then a week later, he's like, oh, no, I'm not doing that. They essentially did it too fast. And he's like, and he also was like, you need to tell me exactly what you did to make that happen and how it worked. And I'm like, why would I give you this information, especially whenever you're not honoring your side of the deal? And it really broke me down. And I learned right then that like my value isn't what I've created. My value is in my ability to consistently create new value. And like when that shifted, I just saw the world a lot differently. I realized that like fundamentally what's important in life is value. It's not money. It's not, assets. It's not like it's value creation. Like when you understand that money is a representation of value and you know how to make value, you have all the money in the world. You have all the things in the world. You can do whatever you want. You have the flexibility to move and navigate through this existence like no one knows. And the trouble, man, is like the whole society, all of modern society is wrapped around serving value rather than creating value. That's a very important delineation. Because if you're, like an obvious example of this is like, oh, well, who's the rich guy and how can I support him? How can I get him to pay me something? Like, no, man, like how did the rich guy become the rich guy is the question. And the answer is usually like, I figured out how to make laundry pods and that was way more convenient for all of us. We really liked that. And like, so we bought his stuff and he made a lot of money. And like, that's a good thing. That's a good thing for society. That's a good thing for existence. Fundamentally, it's good for consciousness. That's what we need to get back to. And we used to think this way as a society. We used to see people like Edison, and we used to see people like Tesla, and we used to see people like Roosevelt, as like real superheroes because they were superheroes, because they figured out how to do things that humans didn't know how to do before that added immense value to society as a whole. And somewhere we've learned that being a lawyer or an accountant is the thing to do. That's not the thing to do. Those are value serving things. You need to be like my opinion, just, for what it's worth, is that the real superheroes in our world are the ones that are going out there looking for ways to create net new value for humans. Like that supersedes all the physical nonsense that we deal with. That supersedes all the cliquey, social, political, whatever. If you figure out how to make electricity and you can now heat people's homes and turn the light on when it's dark, that's so valuable. And that's what I think we should be respecting and glorifying. And I don't say that to like, hey, like glorify me because I made value. It's just like, that's who I care about. I'm most interested in the people that are changing the world and making it better because I think that that's a very high level way to think. And I think that's where the best of life comes from.
I love that. And to your point, it's like, I think a lot of people chase what they can gain versus following how can I add or create value in the first place.
Nick taught me a lot about this, actually. He's good at this. Like, he's very like giving centric. Like, he's always looking for ways to serve other people. Like, I mean, like, think about it, man. Like, if it's all about love, then isn't service like to like others like the greatest thing you can do? And like, if you can like start a fire for someone, it's a pretty loving thing to do for them. If they don't know how to start a fire, or give them water, or give them electricity, or whatever it is. Like it's like that's what it is. It's like it's ultimately when you create value and you're doing so for the benefit of others, you're giving at the fullest extent and serving at the fullest extent known, which is really ultimately just a manifestation of love. And if that's your focus, the rest works itself out.
Aaron, I think that's a perfect way. I could talk to you for hours, but I think that's a perfect way to to end the episode, man. I just want to say thank you for the friendship over the years and congratulations on what you're building with Brez. I'm a fan. I think the way you're building it, the way you're building in public, and also, you know, I know this about you, but it's really come through in this talk, like the authentic reasons for why starting the brand. It comes through in the product, it comes through in everything that you do, and it really comes through in our conversation. And I think that's one of the reasons that Brez will continue to be a massive success. So congratulations, man. Can't wait to keep following the journey. Can't wait to come to Florida and do an ice bath with you as well. And just thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate being on here. I appreciate the great conversation. I appreciate the great questions. And I'm excited to see how Brez unfolds. And I'm excited to see how this podcast continues to grow and expand. And you're always doing such amazing things. And I'm grateful for our friendship. And come over sooner than later. I got a place ready for you. And we'll do some ice bathing, sauna, and maybe film it.
Definitely. On my way. Thank you, bro.
See you soon. All right.